Hey, and welcome to a special edition of Earth Day Always. As you can already tell from seeing three faces on screen right away, this is a little bit different discussion. We are joined by two of the Foresight Labs finest, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves to talk about not only environmental issues, but issues that bring together the environment and whatever else in the world affects that, which is often everything. So with that, let me introduce Ed Quevedo. And Ed, if you could tell us a little bit about who you are, why you're here, and where we're going to go, just briefly, and then we'll go ahead and let Mackinzee say hi.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for inviting us, and thank you, Mackinzee, for making the time to join us. So I founded and direct the work of the Foresight Lab, which is a creative agency and social change lab dedicated to building the regenerative economy. That is to say, to re-envision the world at scale as one where every interaction between nation states, families, and everything in between generates net measurable gains in ecological, social, and economic well-being. And I am applying to this conversation some training that I had during 3 years with an international diplomacy agency called Rios Partners, where I spent 3 years doing peacemaking on battlefields in Africa and South America and Mexico and elsewhere. Because we have a theory that the twin climate crises we face, the external ecological climate crisis that is causing the collapse of ecosystems and the warming of the planet, and the extremely present at this moment internal cultural climate crisis, that is the climate of our culture that permits people of color, women, alternative genders, and others to be marginalized, brutalized, and killed with no consequences. We think we are going to offer some ideas about how the average citizen, in their role as human citizen and leader, because we all these days must be our own leaders, can work on these problems usefully.
Thank you, Ed, for that introduction. And Mackinzee, if you could say a little bit about yourself and how you have come to be here.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Mackinzee. Thanks again for having us here and me here. So born and raised Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Currently going to be a junior at Carthage College in a little town in Wisconsin. Majoring in environmental science and minoring in French, just kind of for fun. So I came to be here because, I mean, it's kind of funny. So I was like, Mom, I lost my internship for the summer. She's like, what? She's like, yeah, it kind of happened. So she just kind of randomly posted on Facebook, and one of my mom's friend's mother knew Ed, and that's how I came to be here.
An excellent story, one that I don't have to tell because I know Ed from having seen him on stage and said, what a great guy. He's probably got some good ideas about many things. Speaking of which, Ed, if you want to sort of kick off this story, I know you've sent me some interesting slides, and I'm wondering if you want to start with one of them or where you want to start.
I want to start by doing something that I told Mackinzee I would do, which is to invite her to contribute to the very foundation of this conversation, but I'll just offer a prompt and say that if we are to succeed in successfully attacking these twin crises, which we have catastrophically and diligently failed to do in any meaningful way, it is not going to be, sadly, your generation, Kevin, or mine, that will lead the way. It will be Mackinzee and her brothers and sisters who will lead the way. And with that, I'd like to invite Mackinzee to offer some thoughts about her reflections on the relationship between these crises and her aspirations for how she might like to see progress made.
Like I've said, and a lot of people my age have said, we feel that our generation are the ones that will make a impactful and long-lasting change, not only for social justice, but for environmental justice as well. growing up with social media and then globalization with social media, I feel that my generation is the most understanding and diverse that have ever been. And because of that, we have a wide range of ideas and we know how to help one another. And with that, also help the earth.
That's a great start. Thank you, Mackinzee. And I'll proceed as you've instructed, Kevin. I'd like this to just be a conversation of reaction and questions that arise from a few provoking points that I'll offer. What the external ecological crisis and the internal cultural crisis have in common is that they are both long-lasting and have been with us through centuries of inaction or wrongful action, number one. Number two, the names we use to describe them are wrong. It is wrong to call the climate crisis an ecological crisis, even though I do it. It's fundamentally something very different. It's also wrong to call the 400-year-old problem of racial prejudice, discrimination, and subjugation of African American, Mexican American, Japanese American, female American, and a litany of other Americans, a cultural or racial or gender problem. It isn't that either. Both of these problems have had lots of experts working on them, and we've spent billions of dollars on both and failed. In fact, they're getting worse, not better. Both of these have been subject to piecemeal approaches, and our best tools as human beings for how to live well together have never been brought to bear on either of these problems, and that's where the work at the lab comes in. So I think these are things that the twin crises share. So maybe that little provocation will prompt some questions or thoughts from either one of you.
You know, I wonder, could you just, for people like me who want to understand things at that big level, but need to have it explained to us 2, 3, 4 times, tell us what the typical explanation is of, well, no, these are two things. These are twin crises that we have to look at separately. What is the typical explanation, rationale for people saying we can't interweave them?
When I was asked to take a hand in trying to resolve one of the current conflicts in a local Bay Area city of size that is facing the aftermath of what happened on Memorial Day, after being on the first call, I realized the nexus that I had been hinting at in my own brain, but never had really worked upon. So I've tested this idea on some very smart people. Today, I told Mackinzee, I had a conversation with 2 very famous people, one of whom was recently a candidate for president and is now working on other matters. But I bounced this idea off them because they're 2 of the smartest humans I know. And they said, you might be onto something. Here's what people have said or would say in the typical, even progressive movement up until now. And then Mackinzee, I'll hand it to you. Ed, you're nuts, which I get a lot of that. I get a fair amount of that. So not used to, in fact, when people say that, I know I'm on the right track. Ed, that's crazy. These are problems. We need climate scientists and ecosystem scientists and biologists and archaeologists and physicists and chemical engineers to work on climate. And we need that's STEM. That's a STEM problem. We need the humanities to work on the other side. We need historians and well-spoken English majors and the skills of empathy and community building. Not only are the problems worlds apart, the responses are massively separated. You need to go get some medication, they might say. I think that's what people would say, Kevin, even in a conventional progressive context. And I think that's a mistaken set of ideas.
Agreed.
Mackinzee, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this.
Yeah, so like you were saying, having many different specialties dealing with an issue, and having many different backgrounds and areas of expertise, weighing in on an issue and trying to solve it will be a lot more effective than just having one person trying to solve it. My generation, we're like one of the most diverse, I feel, and especially with social media, we're also learning about people all the time, learning about people that are different from us. And like as a white woman, I understand my privilege and how I can use that to help those who are not as privileged. And pertaining to the protests right now with the Black Lives Matter movement, like I know what I can do to help, and I'm doing it and will continue to do it and have been doing it. And that also goes with the environment as well, because with climate change, people are affected differently throughout the country, as in poorer communities will experience climate change worse than richer communities if we're talking about, let's say, the warming of the planet, and communities that can't afford to have air conditioning on heat waves will experience high rates of death just because they don't have anywhere to go. Like being indoors is hot, being outdoors would be hot, and they have no air conditioning to keep them cool, unlike the richer communities that have air conditioning that can do that. But they're the ones that can really make a difference if they put their foot down and use their privilege to actually make a change. It won't be easy for sure, but the protests and like strikes for climate change, just those two movements, I hope will resonate with people who weren't thinking about it before and will now.
I want to jump in and just say something that's been on my mind, which is I have been impressed by the way in which there isn't as much intergenerational blame as I thought there might be as we continue to go down the road toward an uncertain future. I mean, I have said to people, I was at a Sunrise Movement demonstration not too long ago, and for our audience who doesn't know, the Sunrise Movement is composed largely of people under 20, and certainly very largely of people under 30. And I was interviewing a young woman, and I said, you know, I apologize on behalf of my generation. I feel like we've let you down. And she said, you know what? It's not about blame. It's about finding a way to move forward. It's about getting things going because, you know, yeah, we are going to be here maybe longer than you are. I'm like, yes, you are. But still, we've just got to all solve this problem for everybody. So thank you, Mackinzee, for not playing the intergenerational blame card.
I ran across this quote when I was an undergrad in a different time when the protests that were consuming college campuses had to do with the adventurism of the United States in the Middle East. And I was in high school when the adventurism of the United States had us going to war in countries in Central America. And those conflicts, the tendency, that's not right, the studious, intentional action of the United States government for over 200 years to undermine democratically elected governments in largely brown, sub-equatorial countries and replace them with dictators and despots for our own commercial gain is one symptom of the common thread that binds these two crises together. And we're doing it still today. And in the froth of this moment, as I was coming into my understanding of the greater world, I read a quote by President Kennedy in a speech that he gave in Baltimore. And he was saying a variety of things about the war in what they were calling Southeast Asia at the time and the conflict between the US and what they called the USSR at the time. And he said these words: "Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable." And I offer you a look out of any window in any major metropolis in the United States today for proof of his wisdom. And as our country burns and suffers from a lack of leadership, and as the triple horrors of climate system collapse, a major international health crisis, and the complete abdication of leadership and responsibility by another despot elected democratically fans the flames of current conflicts in our streets, it's time we took those words seriously and applied our most potent tools to these problems.
You know, yes, yes. John Kennedy, problematic human being that he was a terrific speech maker, excellent president, and had some great words that are important now more than ever, which is in some ways sad because we're 60 years past John Kennedy's inauguration. I have a question about that though, and that is, I often hear, and that includes from people who don't know what it is, but I often hear that they're looking for a third way, another way out of our current crises. It's not like we need to do things completely different, nor is it like we want to go back to the way things were. There's something else that integrates the impulse to conserve the best ideas from the past with the need to move forward without disrupting everything. Is that part of your work?
Mackenzie, I told you I was going to do this. Do you have a thought about that question before I come on to it?
I mean, I think an issue with American culture is that we are afraid of change. And so I think that's something we need to focus on, is telling people that it's okay to change. It's okay to change our ways of how we're doing things. It's okay to change what you believe in. And I think that'll help us be okay with not having to find a third path, but completely repaving the way for a better future, both socially and environmentally, with justice.
Hear, hear.
It's a great start, Mackenzie. Thank you. That is the heart of our work within the lab. We have several programs at the lab. Both Mackenzie and I sit in what's called the Regenerative Design Program. And it's about design of communities, companies, nonprofits. Ultimately, we believe the redesign of our republic for empathy and love. It's our harrowing task to walk into corporate boardrooms and get them to talk seriously about the idea of love and to get them to take it seriously. And we see this in corporate echoes from time to time. We talk about Subaru and one of their brilliant, I think it's much more than just marketing. You know, it's easy to love a Subaru. Sony, years ago, the Japanese companies, because of the Japanese history, which is much longer than ours, talk very easily about love. And love emerges from us using our best human tools. And I will offer those as a further provocation. There's a discipline that our species has used since we were just moving from the agricultural to the settled, what we become in the Indus Valley, the first huge multi-million person human settlement. From those days till today, we have used this discipline and called it by different things. But before I reveal what that discipline is, I'll offer that our best tools help us move from hearing to listening. Hearing is a physical act. Listening is an emotional act. Our best tools help us move from talking to speaking. Again, a physical act versus a socio-emotional act. From looking to seeing. And at a deeper level, from sympathy, which is, oh, I feel your pain, I am sorry, to empathy, which is, I am present with you in your agony. And I will hold it until we both feel like it's past. It's fundamentally different. Words versus action. We have passed laws, we've written regulations, we have training manuals in every police academy. There's over 10,000 municipalities in the United States. Each one of them has a training manual. Many of them have been brilliantly reformed, and these problems persist. How many laws have we written globally about climate change? Laws don't work. Law, as Plato said, is an evidence of the failure of morality. And finally, what do I oppose to laws? Cultural transformation.
So I love that. I love that explanation. And I want to I want to ask how, for people who are just going through every day, do we keep in mind that there are ways to move forward? There are ideas that we can keep in our head about how to interact, how to ask for the best from ourselves, as well as we ask for the best from others. I mean, how do we do that?
Ms. Macho?
It's a really good question. Definitely is. I hear a lot of people say, like, in regards to racism, where they're like, I'm not racist, I don't see color, but that's not how anyone should be approaching that situation. You should see color, and you should realize the differences in culture and realize what people of color have to go through every day in this country that you don't have to, or the white people have to, white Americans have to. And just showing, love and compassion for people who are different from you and embracing their culture, but also, just keeping in mind that people have different experiences, and also the golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated as well. And I think the country is divided now more than ever. It has been within these past few years, I think, and I hope that, the love is something that could bring us back together and bring back humanity to the United States as well.
Yeah. As I look for ways myself to figure out how to bring things together, and an environmental story with a social justice story, with an economic story, with so many people saying, well, let's go first things first. We got to fix the economy, or let's go first things first. We should figure out how to fix the school to prison pipeline. And I always look for that thing that is a strategy, that overarching strategy that's not just a tactic, or not sort of down the road from where we are now. And I love the fact that you are coming to this notion that there is an overarching strategy, and it's the tools you talk about, but it's also bringing love into the corporate boardroom, bringing it into the civic discussion, and not having it be something that sounds like I don't know, namby-pamby or too soft to be part of a real solution. I'm curious, Mackinzee, how do you explain the Foresight Lab if you're talking to a friend of yours who's just like heard, oh, you've got this new internship? What's it about? How do you explain it?
I tell them that it's a different approach. It's a unique approach to how people would normally try to solve an issue. And Ed can explain this a lot better than I can, because he's the one that started it and has all the great ideas about it. But I just tell them it's a different approach to solving things. It's regenerative. It's not just sustainable, meaning that the outcomes are positive, and it is a positive feedback loop. And just what the lab does is help those that need help with kind of re-sparking imagination and creativity in their business to be able to have the best outcome possible.
Okay, so I think that's a great explanation. I'm wondering, Ed, how would you add to that?
I would add only that if there's good ideas in the lab, it's because of a deep and abiding and loving collaboration among the colleagues. If there are good outcomes, it's because people apply themselves with passion and diligence and selflessness and energy, and we have a blast doing the unraveling of the world's most complex ecological, social, and economic problems. And when there's mistakes, it's usually me. But all I would add to the doing of the work is that we do organizational somatic therapy. We go in to companies, nonprofits, municipalities, cities, communities, nation states, provinces of Canada, and we importune to heal the wounds of non-systemic thinking and hold up a mirror to the beautiful dignity of the human experience and use the tools that I'm about to talk about in a variety of non-obvious settings to solve everything from a prominent wine company losing its brand presence and losing its relationship with its customers to a very famous national philanthropy that lost the plot on its mission, to helping the province of British Columbia rediscover how to use and think of and be with water in a different way that will attack climate change meaningfully. So there's that.
You know, as you talk about different kinds of organizations, whether it's a nonprofit, a for-profit, a government organization, I do want to ask both of you about leadership, because so often I come back to somewhat discouraging conclusion that we have had a failure of leadership among among big companies, in the financial sector, among government leaders at many levels of government, and certainly the nonprofit world, while not as subject to leadership angst as either government or for-profit. I mean, I feel like leadership is often lacking, and I'm wondering how we solve that problem, how we ask for and get better leaders.
So I would say that leaders approaching issues thinking only that the people are robots and things are just clearly yes or no, without actually taking into account human traits. We're not robots. It's not easy for people to just be led by someone who only thinks of them as a number and not as an actual human. So like we were saying earlier, I think a leader needs to be compassionate, needs to take into account everyone's backgrounds. They need to understand that people also have differing opinions and should also be able to take criticism as well. I think that's really important. But Ed, do you have anything else to add?
It'll surprise you to know that I do.
Okay.
Although I want to honor that answer because it was really thoughtful. So thank you, Mackinzee. I think that there are a couple of truths about leadership. One of them is if someone calls himself a leader, they're not. Leadership is best embodied by the intersection of humility, insight, foresight, and patience. And we have spent generations training leaders in everything from military academies to business schools horrifically wrong. And so we get the world we've designed for. We've designed for a world where leadership means a stacked org chart with usually a white man at the top, a bunch of other people down below, and the people at the coalface doing the real work get paid the least, get treated the worst, and are appreciated the least frequently. In our world, when we rebuild an organization and work on organizational culture, we turn the pyramid upside down because, to take one example, in a wine company, the CEO means nothing. The COO means a touch. The CFO is entirely irrelevant. The people who matter the most are the beautiful, talented women and men who touch the vines every day. And when you get a large global famous wine company to appreciate that and honor those people who are mostly brown, mostly seasonal, and often not documented, and when the CEO of a reborn wine company can appreciate that, three things happen. People shed tears of joy and insight. The company develops an entirely new energy and the ability to dream of unimaginable success. And they finally harness all of the talent to the greatest capacity, and they crush the competition in the marketplace. We've seen it happen with car companies, tech companies, nonprofits, municipalities. In my agency, the most important people, as I tell my young colleagues, are the youngest. And I'm a bag man. If I show up and get coffee, it's a good day. I'll say a couple of other things. We teach leadership in our agency. I've taught in education policy and business classrooms for the better part of 20 years, a different model of leadership that's built on character. And we talk about this word glibly and wrongly. And this actually leads directly to that discipline I was referring to before that I've been hinting at that will help us tackle these huge crises. We've broken character down into its constituent parts. And if you can help people to embody and live into and breathe with and stand for these traits, there's a chance you might build warriors for the cause, and that they will, without any effort, and certainly without calling themselves leaders, exert what we in the old school call leadership. Those traits begin with grace. We don't talk about this concept enough. I could spend another 40 minutes. I'll keep it brief. Grace is the ability to move lightly in the world, taking both dead seriously the responsibilities you have and carrying those burdens lightly and with a sense of play. Virtue is grace's sister, and it means keeping in mind that all the ethical principles you learned in kindergarten and that you understand in watching your parents or your other loved ones interact is what you need to be a good human. Humility, sharing success and responsibility, and taking blame when things go wrong, admitting you've made a mistake, making every day a school day, because as Aeschylus said, how did he put it? He said, learning is youth regardless of the age. Integrity, another word we throw around without knowing what it means. Integrity means you keep your word, deliver on commitments, and you're at your best when the chips are down, the odds are long, and the stakes are high. It's easy to have integrity and to be good when everything is beautiful and rosy. What counts is how you show up when the chips are down, the odds are long, and the stakes are high. And winning then, winning the day, winning the hearts, nourishing the hearts and spirits and souls of your brothers and sisters in that moment, that yields justice. The last character trait that we think of is justice. It's demonstrated by those who show fair play, fair dealing, and they carry a reputation as someone who is approached when people have a dispute. Let's go to Mackinzee. She'll help us work this out. She's a smart human. And so it is an emergent set of qualities that we call character. I could talk about courage, temperance, transcendence, and judgment, but I'll keep it short and just say that the people who practice the tool I've been alluding to embody these things. And now I'm going to give away the game by saying these include Indira Gandhi, who started her career as one of these people. They include Eleanor Roosevelt, who trained in this. They include somebody that only people like you and I will remember, Helen Gahagan Douglas, the first woman elected to the Senate in 1952, who was one of these. And then more latterly, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, Susan Rice, Madeleine Albright. These are diplomats. And the skill that we use to unravel is statescraft, diplomacy. And you may wonder, isn't it interesting that the word diplomacy, diplomat, and diploma have a common generative root? Their etymology, diplomacy, diplomat, diploma. The diploma is the folded paper that holds truth. That's its original Latin derivation. And in the battlefield, when we forge reconciliation and peace agreements, that folded paper embodies the hope of the combatants to learn to love and hold each other as human, even though they despised each other with the red hot heat of 1,000 suns yesterday. Among the indigenous people that I come from, peace was represented by a broken arrow. We shall lay them down and fight no more. And so the folded paper, the broken arrow, the spoken truth. These are the tools of the diplomat. And as Aeschylus again said, in war, truth is the first casualty. And so it is that the wisdom of the diplomat, the heart of the diplomat, who realizes that her first job is to get the combatants to see the humanity, feel the pain, empathize with the struggle, and identify deeply from within with the reasons that they are in pain. And you live then the truth, and I'll stop here, by one of the best peace laureates we've ever got, the 1999 Nobel Peace Laureate, Oscar Arias, the former president of Costa Rica, who wrote a brilliant book called Waging Peace. And in it, he said, all conflict, from an argument between spouses to a war between nation states and everything in between, comes from unmet human needs. And we have a moral obligation to our children and the young ones who will follow us to find the courage and nerve and fiber to live these things every day and to attack these problems with this kind of vigor and strength and honesty. And if we do that, if we can live into this, there's a chance we might thread the needle and simultaneously stem the collapse of ecosystems, give life and integrity, dignity and honor to all of our brothers and sisters, and achieve the American dream within our lifetime, or maybe Mackenzie's lifetime, rather than grinding ecosystems and civil society to dust beneath the feet of confusion.
You know, that is well put, eloquently put. And I want to acknowledge something, which is that just knowing these things, talking about character and breaking character down into component parts is really helpful. But it also, it begs us to set a high bar for ourselves, lead by example, nurture good qualities in others. And that's hard, right? That's really hard, especially if you perceive others to be wrong-headed, misguided, not speaking from the same values that you hold. So what is it you can do? What is it I can do to step back on occasion and say, let this play out. We're gonna ease this ship just a little bit that way when we get a chance. I mean, how do you do that?
It's exactly what it is. It's 1,000 raindrops on stone that change the direction of a society, and nothing less. It's not laws, it's cultural transformation from the inside out. Mackenzie, I've been talking way too much. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Kevin's inquiry at this point, if it's okay, or else I can go first and you can go second, but I'd offer you the chance to go first if you like.
You can keep going. I'll add when you're done.
Okay, I promise I'll be brief. I know that's usually a hollow promise when I'm talking, but I'll say this. I learned two things when I was preparing to do my first commission in Rios and go and do peacemaking on a battlefield in Africa, in the country of Kenya. Adam showed me a picture. Adam Kahane founded Rios. He's a brilliant and gifted human, a spiritual creature, and somebody who deserves to be better known. He founded Rios Partners, this international diplomacy agency where I worked. He showed me a book one time, and all he did, he said, all you need to do is to see the cover. And he held it up in his living room where he lived, because that's where you keep your living room. And it was a cover of a book called Why the Dalai Lama Matters. And the cover is this unique picture. The Dalai Lama is walking past a line of Chinese soldiers who are occupying his home country and are killing his brothers and sisters. He's got his hand on the barrel of a rifle, and he's looking into the eyes of the Chinese soldier with a look of pacific, abiding, endless love. And I hold it when I walk into tough situations and I'm asked to do the impossible by the downtrodden in not enough time. I think of that picture and I find my way out, because it helps me remember that we're humans first. And there's another tool that he teaches, and I would commend it to you and to everyone. We can use this in how we treat our children, our parents, our loved ones, our mayor, our producer, our colleagues, and ultimately our least advantaged brothers and sisters who need our extended hand of love. The words of the Buddha, and this is so applicable and helpful. He said, "Speak with love. So before you speak, put your words through 3 gates. Ask first, is what I'm about to say true? Ask second, is what I'm about to say honest? And finally, ask, is this helpful?" And if your words pass through all 3 gates, then speak your truth, and your life you will find. When I'm upset with, I fail at this all the time, but when I'm upset with someone, I try to do that. And it's amazing the effect it has. I've watched people who yesterday were shooting at each other's heads in a room in the hands of a brilliant diplomat like Adam Kahane and others do that when you model it. And the last thing I'll say is, this is our daily bread. This crisis will pass, and everybody will forget, and it'll happen again. It's like mass shootings. They happen, we get upset, we have arguments, we pass laws, they happen again. The only way we break this cycle is by making it our daily bread. Every single day, in some way, as Mackenzie was saying earlier, find the way that you, in your place, in your life, as a citizen, as a brother, as a sister, as a human, can contribute in even the smallest way to uplifting the soul. I said to my kids when they said, "Dad, what in the world?" I said, every time you wash your hands, which we're doing a lot of these days, think of this problem, and have you done your daily bread? Make it your livelihood. It's a great word, your livelihood. It should be lively. Your work should be lively and fun. And if we do those things every day in small ways, in our communities, in our families, when we vote, when we go to debates, when we act in civic life, we have a chance. That was nothing near brief, so sorry. Mackenzie, please.
Yeah, Mackenzie, I just want to say, by the way, you have my sympathy hanging out with Ed a lot, not because he explains things in detail, but because each little portion of his explanation demands attention and is its own head-nodding thing. So, yeah, you have my sympathy, and I'm a little jealous at the same time.
Yeah, I'm like a bobblehead over here, just agreeing with everything, because everything he says is just amazing. But I would also just add, in America, I feel like we're always so quick to judge and so quick to speak on something without actually thinking about it first and really giving it the thought it needs. And also thinking about how it applies to you and your culture, your heritage, where you come from, what a certain problem or question means to you. And instead of jumping into something and denying it or criticizing it or completely agreeing with it, also understanding the background to the issue, how it affects you, affects those around you. And I would also say, know that each individual person has the power to make a difference. But when people come together, I think that's when real change can happen, in regards to what's happening with the protests right now. And then also going back to climate change, once we get people to come together, share their ideas, their feelings, their knowledge, their background, I feel that's when effective change can really occur here in the United States.
And here we are, by the way, nodding as you speak. So yes, the bobblehead goes both ways. That's a bumper sticker, I think, right?
Or a t-shirt.
All right. Last question, just for fun. What is it that you expect will change your mind about an issue in the near future? Is it and I'm imagining that you all experience a little evolution of your thinking daily, but there's always a point where we reach a crisis point, an inflection point, and we feel like our minds have really changed. Is the pandemic was one, but where can we hope there's going to be an inflection point in the future? Is it going to come from the election? Is it going to come from a reinvigoration of the virus? Is it going to be coming from an epiphany in government somewhere? I'm looking for some hope. It doesn't have to be reasonable hope. It can just be hope.
Mackenzie?
I mean, one thing I would say is, it's our right to vote for sure. So I would say if we're wanting change, we should, use our right to vote to put those in office that we feel will actually create the change. Because, like each individual person has power, but those in power positions can actually really make those differences that we need. And, voting someone in that has those characteristics of a humanistic person, compassionate, caring, understanding, they hear you and they're listening to what you're saying. I think that's something that will bring about change is, not everyone votes, and they should be, because, it's a right in America to be able to do that. And, just like 100 years ago, like women couldn't vote. It's, I just feel like voting will really make a difference. I feel like my generation is kind of disappointed with those older than us who didn't go out and vote in like the past presidential election. Like we saw that majority of voices were like 50 plus, I believe, voting, because, they understand that one vote really does make a difference, and a collective number of those votes makes a change. So yeah, I would just say making sure we get out and vote. I feel like a lot of people around me I know realize the importance in voting. Like I had to convince my parents to vote, because my dad, who's like 56, I don't mean to out him here, but he had never voted before. And I was just curious how, because you that's your right, and just wondering, like why not vote? Like voice what you want, like vote for what you want, and not just hope that something good happens. So yeah.
Yay for voting, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great launch pad there, Ms. Mako. That's great. Yeah, I guess I'd only add a couple of things. When are we wise enough? When are we compassionate enough? When are we open enough? Never. We don't wait to do that. We try to do that every day. We work on it in small ways. You asked a good question about when we have our minds changed. Hopefully we have our minds open to change all the time. It's a trait we haven't talked about, but I think a fundamental trait of humanity. It is. It's demonstrated through both neuroscience and archaeology. Curiosity. What makes you that way? We think about that when we meet in a large conference, Kevin, like you and I did, or when I encounter a brilliant young human who's trying to find her path, and I'm thinking, what makes her that way? What makes her so smart? If we can ask that question of our most abiding enemy, so-called, and remember that that's a human being too. That's someone's child. That's someone's brother. That's someone's father. They want the same things we want. As John Kennedy said in the midst of the crisis, he said, we can fight, we can exterminate each other, we can make that choice, or we can remember that the thing that bonds us to the people of the USSR is that we all love our children. We all want them to grow up and have a good life. We all want them to stand for something honorable, and we all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And that's good daily bread to live with. And if we can remain curious and open to learning all the time, even from someone who we disagree with, we will embody that principle that is spoken by the truths of the Buddha and that beautiful picture of the Dalai Lama. And we don't wait for an inflection point. We do it now. We do it every day. We be impatient and impulsive and, if necessary, overtly passionate. And I'll close by riffing on a common American patois of some recent vintage when they say, dance like nobody's watching. I will say, make peace like nobody's ever going to hurt again. So let's make peace with ourselves, with our brothers and sisters, and try to apply these tools. And maybe we can make for a better, brighter sunrise tomorrow.
You know, I am so delighted to know both of you. I want to add that I am looking forward to a time when the things you are talking about, the things you're bringing to the forefront here, are just accepted without any question. You know, Mackinzee, the last time Ed was on, I said, I hope someday there's a cabinet level job for you, or even better yet, a cabinet presence, a real department that embodies all of this. And I still do. I look forward to the time when our leaders can display the kinds of things that you're talking about. Curiosity. I look forward to a curious leader and compassionate leader, and also someone who is humble, because, you know, we unfortunately seem to attract into our politics people who are not particularly humble, and humility is such a valuable thing. I mean, even though you may be solid in your convictions, you can still be humble in your heart, right? But it's hard. It's hard for a lot of people. So, Edward Quevedo, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for bringing Mackinzee Macho. Thank you very much for being here. Will I see you guys around? Will you guys come back and visit us?
Of course. Anytime.